Peace. Peace and wisdom. It's the wise servant here, Mr. Solace. Percent. Today I want to do this video called Did Africans Build the Pyramids? Now this video is very interesting. I'm not here to shoot anything down, but I want to just give you guys something very deep and interesting to think about when dealing with the pyramids and its creation. So it's a very deep thing. Now we get into a time, everything deals with time. So, the way we see things in today's times is not necessarily how they were seen in the past. So they didn't really have colors. We view things more in a color sense. You got the blacks, the whites, the browns. And this is actually people and nationalities, but we kind of throw things into color. So they didn't perceive things with the color aspect in the past, but we kind of just view things from our perception. So it's deep. But in today's times, everything is kind of, pulling towards Africa. So, life began in Africa. Africans built the pyramids, and more things are just beginning to catch on that started with Africa. And I'm not here to shoot that down, because there was a point in time where Caucasians did everything. Everything started with them. So, Caucasians made man out of monkey. And this is the Anunnaki story and all of this. And that was Caucasians. And the pharaohs was Caucasians. And this is just how things were pushed out to be perceived by the masses. Jesus was Caucasian. I'm sorry. Y'all know I'm not into religion, but it's a deep thing. They even said Jesus was, we even view Jesus as white. You got people that think Jesus was white. Now, when those times and where Jesus was from, it would be unlikely that he was white, but he could have been white. I mean, you had white people in his times all in those places. But I'm just giving you the perspective. White people pretty much claimed everything. So they was even Jesus. I mean, shit, Malcolm X is white. If it was their way, Malcolm X is white. But, that's too close. So people still remember X. They like, nah, X was black. But it's deep. If you talk to the youth today, they be like, man, I thought Malcolm X was Arab, and they don't know. They don't have a clue what's going on. Our youth and today is deep. A lot of y'all laughing, and I know a lot of y'all like, man, ain't nobody that dumb. Yo, it's youth out there right now. They don't even know who Malcolm X is, let alone his nationality. So you got youth, they like, you know who Malcolm X is? They like, yeah. But they don't. But they like, I think I'm supposed to know that. So yeah, I know who Malcolm X is. But if you ask them, like, who is Malcolm X? Then, they don't know. They like, man, Malcolm X, Denzel Washington. Spike Lee and all that. Man, get your shit together, man. I stay up on my history, man, and then they breeze off. Because they like, I don't know who the fuck that is. So it's deep. I don't want to throw y'all off with the comedy, I be cracking myself up, but this is all real. Even though it's funny and it's comedy, but this is real stuff. Our youth are really like this. So they think like Malcolm X is Denzel Washington. They like, this is how we explain things through movies. So it's deep, cold-blooded. But, in today's times, everything is being Africanized, so to say. So, Africans built the pyramids. Africans kind of did everything. It's getting to the point where we're all Africans. Everybody's, even a white person, they Africans, because life started with Africa. So even, you know what I mean? So it's getting to that point where it's like, hold on. The one thing we should have learned from the Caucasians in them doing this, making it like they are the pinnacle of everything. The main thing we should have learned from that is the first sign of deceit. So this is why everything is becoming Africanized or melanated. Because of that, when you go too hard, it it snaps people out. Like, hold on, there's no way one group did every. Like, come on, y'all, Jesus, Muhammad, Malcolm X, everybody, Buffalo Bill, y'all, everybody. So we kind of get people to thinking, like, hold on, hold up. So, my point of saying that is, this is where we are getting with the African stuff. Is getting to the point where it's like that. But that's kind of like a balancing act of life, you can say. When things get too far off balance, then they yank back. And we in the yanking back part. But the main thing people need to grasp in a whole is that when you're trying to get knowledge, and knowledge and wisdom is truth, we need to understand that. These things go together. History, you got a bunch of things said, but the wisdom and knowledge lies in what is the truth. So we need to just begin to understand that the people of today, none of us are the people of the past. None of us are responsible for any of the great things that you see. These great structures like the pyramids, no group of people in these times did that. And we have nothing to do with that. So we all need to just humble ourselves. Because even if you go back 2,000 years, 3,000 years, those people did not make that. People descend from people. And they're mixing and mingling and so on and so forth. The nationalities of today are not the nationalities of the past. So we have to begin to put these things in perspective. Humble yourself out so that you can see things from a more clear perspective. So it's a very deep thing we need to grasp. Now, when you're dealing with the pyramids, you will hear in today times that Africans are really the ones that built the pyramids. But the first thing I want you guys to think about is this. If Africans built the pyramids, when was the last time Africans built the pyramid? And this is my point. You don't see Africans building pyramids anymore. Why is that? You can go back 5,000 years. Africans, they weren't building pyramids. In fact, if you go back 5,000 years, nobody ever heard of an African. So we have to grasp that's a white thing. It's a very deep thing I need y'all to grasp. But many things like this are not being included into the thought. We just trying to balance things out. So Caucasians did everything, so now Africans did everything. Because when you think of black melanated people, the African is like the pinnacle of that in today. And you can get nothing more melanated. I say melanated because I don't want y'all to get lost in the nationalities and race. That's where things get confusing. But, just you got the melanated and those that ain't melanated, you can say. Now, everybody got a sense of it, but I don't feel like going into that. But just look at it as a scale. You have those that have high and all the way to low. Well, when you're thinking about the high melanated, well, Africa is that. So then we kind of just put everything there. Started in Africa, so on and so forth. They built the pyramids, but I want y'all to think when you're dealing with the pyramids. Now, the pyramids, they kind of predate the people. Now, a lot of y'all are like, what do you mean the pyramids predate the people? People built the pyramids. Yes, but the people that built the pyramids, we have no clue. And this is my point. All the history that we have of the earth, we got the Sumerian history that date back pretty far. You got ancient Kemetic history. You got many different histories that we have somewhat. But the people of those times didn't build that structure. So y'all have to grasp, it's almost like the pyramids predate as far back as we can go. So as far back history we have, meaning with civilized people in cities and things like this. As far back as you could go to the most ancient civilized people, the pyramids were. So it's a deep thing you have to grasp. When we get to pulling and saying, oh, this people made the pyramids or that people made the pyramids, the first thing we need to deal with is nationality and race. Nationality and race of today is not the same as nationality and race of the past. We all know this. We don't even have the same words for the nationalities. So the nationalities of today are different from the past. And the reason for that is because the people from the past, when they mixed and mingled and had offsprings, you get a new. And over thousands of years, you get an abundance of that new, and they take on the new. New name, everything, to where you get to our times, the names ain't even the same anymore. Now you have to remember, they didn't really deal with the colors like brown, white, black in their nationalities. So this is where we get confused. We start pulling for this race or that race. So we reach for our races of today to take claim of what races of the past did, not really understanding if we are even in a line with them. So it's a very deep thing I want you guys to grasp. Damn, that was weird as fuck. Y'all saw that? I can't make it do that. What the? I don't know if that was me bugging. Did y'all see that? It don't matter. But anyway, when you're dealing with the pyramids, right? That threw me off. But when you're dealing with the pyramids, first thing you have to remember is you can't carbon date stone. So when they tell y'all the pyramids is this old or that old, they cannot tell y'all that, because you can't carbon date stone. What they try to do is get things from around the area to carbon date a thing and say, well, this thing is about that old, so the stone is next to it or the rock is next to it, so it should be. And this is how they try to come to a conclusion. But that's truly not an accurate thing to do. So we just have to grasp, when you're dealing with the pyramids, we will truly never know how old they are unless someone inscribed inside the age or the time it was built. And the problem with that would be they kept time different in the past. They had different words for their time in the past. So it's a deep thing. If they would have inscribed when the pyramids were built, we wouldn't know, because like I said, they had different wordings, different ways they view time. We got time how we have it, but they had it their way. They may keep time by the month, so it's different. You had different times. But when you're dealing with the pyramids, the first thing we need to do is put out all the truth, things like that. You can't carbon date stone, so we can't find out the date of the pyramids. So the first thing we got to do is stop doing that. The pyramids can be old. Now the pyramids is before the flood, so to say, that the Bible speaks of, because the Bible says a flood. In today times, we say there was an ice age of 12,000 BC. So ice age, flood, same thing. From each you will get the other. So from ice you'll get water, a flood. From a flood you'll get ice. So it's either or. But the pyramids kind of date back before that flood. So when you're dealing with after the flood, according to the Bible, then you got Nimrod. He's the first to build cities and things like this. But there's no mention of pyramids. So you have to grasp, the pyramids must have already been there, because the Bible doesn't mention anything about building pyramids. Now, you have the Tower of Babel, and I know many of you will say, well, that was the pyramids. Okay, well, that was right after the flood, meaning that was around 12,000 years ago. So this is my point. The pyramids go back far. But the Tower of Babel, I don't think that was the pyramids. I don't think they would have called the pyramids a tower. So you got to grasp, the Tower of Babel had to do with a city. The pyramids, they have to do with a city as well. I don't want you to think it doesn't have to do with a city, but it would have just, I don't know, it could have been we could say the Tower of Babel was the pyramids. But still, I like to deal with truth. So, in reality, you just guessing. Tower of Babel, maybe. Maybe not. If the Tower of Babel is not the pyramids, then we have to come to the conclusion, okay, the pyramids is before Nimrod, before the flood then. So we have to really start to grasp how old is these things really? Because the pyramids could be 50,000 years old. We dealing with stone, heavy stone. So you have to grasp 10,000 years from now, they still going to be there. Like, people don't think ahead. Sometimes you got to think into the future to grasp the past and say to yourself, okay, the pyramids been up and standing for about 2,000 years, meaning we at the year 2018. So we can at least say for 2018 years, man, them things just been there and nobody don't know how. Now think 2,000 years from now. You're still going to be there. You got all new people now. So you have to grasp, how old are the pyramids? Because 5,000 years from now, it's still going to be there. And what they going to say, oh, the pyramids is from the people of 2018 time. Mind you, no, it ain't. They was just here. We take claim to things, land, anything we can. That's how we do as people. I mean, people literally take a claim of the land. Now, we all know ain't nobody made the land. Men live on the land, but so don't get lost, man. People over all times of history will take claim of anything they can. But my point is, we got to start to realize, man, these pyramids go back to a time way more farther than y'all can perceive. And this is where it gets interesting. I want to go into the oldest human remains. Because people say the oldest human remains were found in Africa. Now, I'm jumping to this because this correlates with you guys grasping how old the pyramids truly can be. Because when y'all do things like that and say the oldest human remains was in Africa, y'all have to grasp. That's just what was found. Mind you, they found other things since this time, but we still regurgitate old information. So it's a deep thing. But when you're dealing with findings of human remains, new things will be found. So you can't get to truth by putting a cap on something that there's going to be other things discovered after. So if the oldest human remains were found in Africa, that's just the oldest that we have as of now. But I truly want y'all to grasp, the oldest human remains found is truly not dated to when they say. Because they would never find a skull or any kind of human remains in human remain form if it truly dated back as far as they say. Because all things fossilize, rock up, turn into stone. So let's say someone buried 20,000 years ago. Their body would be stone rock. You'd have diamonds, all type, because diamond is within rock. So when we excavating diamond and things, you have to grasp. This is all what the body is made of. The carbon and all these things in this. This is what this dry out and fossilize into. So you have to grasp. A body from 20,000 years ago would be rock, diamond, things like this, break apart, and this is how you get all the rocks and things we have. So if they're not bringing you a rock and saying this is a human remain from 50,000 years ago found, if they bringing you a skull, then you have to grasp that skull ain't from as long as they're saying, lest it wouldn't be a skull anymore. It'll be rock. So y'all have to grasp, they don't make sense. You can look this up. If you bury a person, it will rock up and turn into rock. So it's deep. Depending on how long it is, how much carbon is within it, things like this, you will get diamond. But you won't have the human body. We get lost because we think buried and we think coffin, and then when you got it in the ground, and then it's still a skeleton and so on and so forth. But These human remains, they're fine and they're being dug up. So if you see anything buried in a coffin or a box or something like that, it will still be in skeleton form. But how do you tell how old it was, being as though boxes are put into the ground? Now, when you're dealing with time, this is the layers of the ground. The past is beneath us, in a sense, you could say. So the life begins to stack on top. So the ground of the past would have been lower. Therefore, the people and the remains of the past will be lower into the sediment, the soil, whatever you want to call it. It'll be lower down. So you have to grasp, if a person of today is buried in a box, they're pushed down into sediment that they are not from that time, but this is how we bury people. Now you have to grasp, in the past, if a person was just buried or worldwide catastrophe came and just swept over the lands, people were just buried, plain. These people would have turned into rock. My point? They're showing y'all human remains of recent things, but they're saying it's older than it is. The proof of that? Because those human remains they show y'all should look like rock. Rocks that y'all see everywhere. That's what it should look like. Or stone, not a goddamn skeleton. So this is my point. We just fall into anything. We got to get a deep understanding and just begin to realize you can't date stone. Now, when you're dealing with pyramids and you're dealing with nationalities of people and who came from what place and this thing like that, people move from place to place. So when you're trying to pinpoint what race and nationality came from where, you're going to always get lost because, like I said, the nationalities of the past are not the same as today. That's for starters. Secondly, nationalities that are native to places are moved. If you need an example, you have the Trail of Tears Act, where all those natives were moved from their lands over in Georgia and many different places. North Carolina, etc., etc. Look it up. This was recent. So, a people can be native to a place and just be removed from that place. And over time now, they're looked at as whatever new place they're in is their place. And the people that's in their place now, that's their place. And they native to it. So we got to get all of this out of our minds, like Africa. Africa is the first place. Or Africa is the motherlands. The first thing we got to understand is that word Africa, that whole structure of Africa that we have today, it didn't exist in the past. If you go back 500 years ago, there was no Africa. So we have to deal with things like this. Because when we say these things, this is Caucasian stuff. Caucasian made Africa. So when you speak Africa, you're speaking Caucasian. Influence on those peoples. So we have to grasp, if you go back, there was no Africa. Those were just different countries, so to say. Different groups of people. Whether they look the same or not, whatever. But all those places was not just one place called Africa. So you have to grasp. And those people of those times is not the same as the people in Africa of today. If you're confused on that, well, the people of today don't have no clue where the pyramids came from. If we did, you wouldn't have a whole bunch of different theories and stories. So grasp. You go to Africa, they don't know. They trying to figure it out too. So grasp. It's a deep thing. If Africans is native to Africa, then why they don't know the shit that I don't care how deep y'all go. Africans don't know where them goddamn pyramids came from. If they did, they would all have the same story. They don't. Everybody got their own different rendition or guess. Why is that? Because maybe people ain't native to these places as y'all keep saying. And a lot of things I say we have to include. Like I said, people don't come from the planet. People don't come from the continent. But people come from other people. Meaning you were born from a person, not from a continent. Therefore, people are mobile and they move around. Always. So to try to pinpoint accurate any people to a place, You're getting lost in pseudo. That is pseudo. Think on that, because we tend to call things pseudo that's not familiar to the ear. And what's familiar to the ear is not pseudo. But a lot of the things that y'all say that's familiar is pseudo. Like everyone, like life started in Africa and migrated out. That's pseudo because that doesn't go along with real life. Now, yes, that's a popular thing that's said, but it doesn't correlate with life. So this is pseudo, but we don't think on that note. We know people move around, people get moved from their places. We know that the nationalities of the past ain't necessarily the nationalities of today. Yet, we say things like the Africans are native to Africa and so on and so forth, forgetting that Africa is a Caucasian word. So, how can an African be native to Africa and that whole thing was white made? Meaning that word, that name, the way you see the people all colonized, and this was all shaped and formed from Caucasians. So we have to get to a perspective to grasp and say, okay, wait, hold on. We're attacking and looking at all of these things from a pseudo perspective. It's deep. Just because something is common and familiar doesn't mean it isn't pseudo. The science and the things that y'all speak, the familiar, what we're taught. It's like I tell y'all, school was a system that was made for brainwashing the natives here and everyone to follow. So a lot of the things that y'all speak of that come from school, it's pseudo when you put logic to it. So y'all have to grasp. Makes no sense. Everyone derived from Africa and the Africans built the pyramids. Okay, how come the Africans don't really know shit about their own lands? They're like everyone else. You say, oh, because they're the descendants of them people from that time. Still, why don't they know? Oh, because Caucasians came in a land, and that's what I want y'all to get to. People mix and mingle. Grasp. People are removed from their lands and new people come into it. So when you dealing with who built the pyramids and who is native to this place or that place, and you not including none of these things, then you gonna always be lost into pulling for whatever you want the truth to be. And that's where we are today. And we have to just get a little more real. We have to understand all this African stuff came from Caucasians, and if you trying to deal with the truth in African culture and history, you need to start removing a lot of these layers of lies, and you need to start with that and understanding that Africa is a term of colonization. It's a European term that's familiar in today's times, but this is what creates a lot of confusion when we're trying to figure out old things. We don't apply that. We don't apply that these were different people in their perspective. And the structure was nothing how it is today. There was no Africa or continents in a perspective of how we see it. So we have to grasp it's a very deep thing, and we have to just begin to understand that those pyramids go back farther than most people can perceive. So when you're dealing with that, you have to understand nationality of those times, and it's deep. You had different sized people in them times because we don't apply the 3,000 year cycles. You know, things I break down in my other videos. You know, every 3,000 years you get a worldwide catastrophe, like an earth cleansing. And, you know, the Bible has it as the flood. We have it dated as the ice age. And, you know, there's many worldwide catastrophes over the history of man every 3,000 years or so. This is why when you looking up history, man never seems to go beyond the year 3000. We're at the year 2018. If you go back, you got 1 AD, then 1 BC, and then you go ahead, but they didn't keep time like that, backwards, you know, 10 BC, 9 BC. We keep it like that, but they would have been going forward. So it truly should be the year, get my point, 20,000, a million, whatever. But we at 2018, so I just want you to grasp. You have these cycles, and, you know, man, it's not a man thing, but it's just like the seasons, but just on a solar level. So it happens every 3,000 years or so. But none of these things are applied into it. So when we reach for nationality and all these things, we kind of lose ourselves because we don't apply the necessities to it. We just kind of try to float to what we want things to be. But I'll come back and go more in depth on this pyramid thing. But I just want y'all to sit with that thought. So when I do come, because I'm going to start breaking down the pyramid knowledge and things like that. Things y'all ain't heard before. But I want y'all to take what I gave y'all now and start to think on that. Like, yeah, he's right. It's a lot of things we have to begin to include into the logic. We got to start removing away lies, because a lot of theories and things have become fact. And a lot of things that logically don't make sense because of these theories became fact because it lines up with the theory. So it's deep, but we have to just begin to remove away a lot of layers. Starting with that word Africa and how everything is bunched into one. We got to remove things like that away. We got to remove away things like stone can't be carbon dated, and we just have to start to acknowledge truths like that. Human remains that's found, that's just the oldest found as of today. But there will be older found, and we just have to stop shortchanging ourselves. Therefore, people can get the wisdom and the truth. So like I said, I'm going to begin to start diving into the pyramids and what they are and things like this and who built them and, the things that men struggle with today. But I need to shape and form your perspective more into truth because it's so conditioned. When I say things, y'all get lost. I'd have to do a whole video like this before I even break down what the pyramids and things like this is, who built it, and then it becomes so long. I don't like to talk that long. I like to just get to the point, but you kind of got to give people a history. And then the way we have history viewed in today, then you like, okay, I have to shape and form their mind away from a lot of the perspectives they have that don't even make sense. Like people saying the pyramids date to this point, and this ancient human remains was this old. They don't know how old no ancient human remains is because it'll be rock. You can't carbon date that. So they just try to take the things from around it to say, well, it's around this, so it may be this old. But you have earthquakes, all types of things. You have people burying people deep down. So this messes that up. You can't just say, oh, I found this around this level, and things around this time date back to 20,000 BC, so this skull must be from 20,000 BC. But you have to have the logic to know, okay, a skull from 20,000 BC buried this at this level would be rock now. And this skull is in rock. So this skull must be newer. And it was pushed down here because of an earthquake or because someone buried it down here or whatever the case may be. But we have to begin to apply truth to these things and just not jump to the conclusion, because that's when things get all fuzzy. So it's a very deep thing I want you guys to grasp. When you're dealing with the pyramids and things like this, it's a little more complex than we view it, but it's only because of the conditioning we have on it. So the conditioning makes things more complex, but once you remove the conditioning, things become simple. So it's a very deep thing, but it's the wise servant here, Mr. Solace. About to begin my day. It's very early in the morning. Take me a shower, get dressed, begin my day. I'm going to eat. I'm hungry this morning. I don't know why, but just take heed to the things I said, and yeah, try to shape your mind and get it more on a truth perspective, so that certain things, when I break them down, they make sense to you. You don't have to get confused and say, no, but that doesn't sound familiar, and that doesn't go with this thing that I was conditioned in. So we have to begin to realize most of the knowledge that we have, or y'all have, or however y'all want to view it, this is knowledge that was pushed and conditioned onto y'all, but you have to put your logic to it. And it's a deep thing, but it's the wise servant here, Mr. Solace. Peace and wisdom.